Okay. So what about you personally? Do you think that the research is a suggestion of evidence that there's life after death, the near-death experience in itself?
Yes, so that's actually a very complex question. If you take the near-death experience study, probably just to back up a bit, our data came after a television broadcast. We got 2,000 letters, and of those we took 500, and we got and sent out a questionnaire to the 500 people, and that formed our first database. And these were essentially chosen because we felt they were true near-death experiences. And the first thing you find is not in our central 500, but in the peripheral runs. There are a whole set of experiences which are very similar to near-death experiences, which clearly didn't occur near-death. We had people who had them when they were sitting in front of the fire relaxing. We had near-death experience dreams. We had people who it would suddenly come to and they would give an account of a near-death experience. Then we have the fear-death experience. And then we have the ones of people who were near death, either because they were seriously ill with meningitis, or they had just delivered a baby and had bled profusely, or during an operation which they had bled profusely, and really were near death. Now, it's quite clear that all those, or even though the phenomenology is different, they don't fit near death. Do you see? So if you just say, okay, somebody tells you a story of near death, then it actually doesn't help very much unless you actually know what the cerebral physiology is at that time. Otherwise it could be within that group. And fear-death is a huge group of that. People who are extremely frightened. Well, they're not near death, but they're very, very frightened. So the near-death experience itself doesn't say anything about life after death. Now the question is then, does the near-death experience in the cardiac arrest say anything about life after death? And now you're beginning to get closer to it, because don't forget, with the cardiac arrest, you have no pulse, no respiration, no brainstem reflexes, no cough reflex, and your pupils are widely dilated and fixed, and that are the clinical signs, the international clinical signs of death. These people are dead to all intents and purposes. It's still reversible for a short time, but during that period they are actually dead and have all the signs of being dead. Now, if you can show during that time that people have near-death experiences, in other words, there is a continuing consciousness, then it puts the question of life after death right central on the map. So that's why the cardiac arrest data is so important. But one of the things which interested me particularly was whether the cardiac arrest data pointed to life after death. Should we even think about that? And so the next thing to do is what this would mean is that as you approach death, near-death experience, imagery and feelings and everything will be prominent as you die. And so we set out to look at the phenomenology of people coming close to death and people actually dying. When you do that, you find there's very little known about it in our culture. The Tibetans know a lot more than we do. But we found what we thought we might find, and that is that there is a subgroup of people who are dying who transit from the hospice bed where they're lying in, dying, into another reality which is very much like the reality of the near-death experience, and they transit back and forth between the two, which gives some superficial validation for the idea that the near-death experience may be part of the dying process, which we think it is because of the cardiac arrest data. And then we went on to all the fascinating things which happen as you approach death, and it's an amazing time.
Okay.